Okay, great. So, so I think I hope I'm guessing we have around like 20 plus students also on the call. So so thank Balasubramanian sir already introduced me, my profile. I'll just quickly go over high level things. So my name is Bharathi Masilamani. So I did 14 plus years at Amazon in US as senior manager, and then moved to India as well as senior manager. As Sir's mentioned, I have a few patents that I've applied for in the US. I've run multiple business units and products that we've launched at Amazon over the course of the time as a manager. And it has been a wonderful journey and a wonderful experience all throughout. Amazon is a wonderful company. And then later on, I moved to India, and then also did some more payments related, fintech related projects, which was very successful and launched in multiple countries. At that time, and just right around that time, the startup economy and startup ecosystem in India was booming a lot around 2017, 2018. So I thought it was a good time to take the plunge because I've been comfortable with Amazon itself. So that's how I joined along with my friends and family for another startup called. It was named as Sigaram Technologies. Sigaram meaning like pinnacle of technology or pinnacle of innovation, something of that sort. We are a team of around 15 people, including developers, managers, product managers, and UI UX designers and things like that. We are here in Adayar in Chennai. So we've tried to model the startup and a company very similar to what we would do it as an Amazon, a smaller team in Amazon itself. We have our own leadership principles. We took efforts to, chart out these leadership principles or qualities very ahead of time. And then, so that helped us in how we conduct and how the culture of the team and the company grows as the company grows as well. It has been 3 years since we started, and throughout the time, it has been a wonderful to recruit high quality students, employees, other folks, and also maintain that same culture and same high quality bar, just like you would have at Amazon or Google or like Facebook, any other top notch companies, and things, right? And that gives me an immense pleasure as well. So as Sir was mentioning, so we launched Piquito, and then we also launched. We have 2 products in the market. It's called Piquito and GoPrinto. We've been very fortunate to have alumni and students from SSN to have worked on both these products. Actually, in fact, there was Arjit Natarajan who used to work for Piquito, the product, and then we have currently the 4th year guy Ferran Suleiman who's working in GoPrinto product. So we've been fortunate to have interns from SSN. So thanks a lot to Chitra ma'am, Balasubramanian sir as well. So coming to this topic, right? I understand the startup ecosystem, the startup initiative as such in India, and the entire world is really going very high and very in great momentum. So I do want to. I think one of the main topics was to. That was suggested to me was to talk about startups and how to do startup in India. How do we make what is the difference between a startup and a business and an entrepreneurship and things like that. So I took the liberty. I was actually thinking of how to write this whole PPT, and I started with a lot of writing, a lot of details, but I thought maybe that is not correct, and I made it very broad so that I give a high level overview of what is startup, what is entrepreneurship, how do you do business, how do you run a company, and things like that, and then leave the floor for any questions or anything of that sort. Does that sound good? Just to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, looks good. Go ahead.
Great. So unfortunately, I think a couple of times ago, last couple of years ago, I was in person in the SSN College campus, and I had a different topic, and I think I was able to see the students in face to face. So it was good, but unfortunately we're all in Zoom, so I'm not able to ask questions and folks. But if you guys think about it, like how many of you guys know about startup or entrepreneurship and things like that? I don't know how we can take that call. Do you guys want to give a hands up, students, just to make sure that I'm not the only person talking?
No, they can unmute and talk actually.
Sure. How many of you guys?
52.
I'm guessing most of you guys know what is a startup and what is entrepreneurship and things like that. Let me ask a different question. How many of you guys want to do a startup in future? You can unmute and say yes.
Or I can pick some volunteer for you actually.
Okay, I got one thumbs up. Okay, I got
Okay.
one thumbs up.
Okay.
I got one thumbs up. Thumbs up is great as well. That
Okay.
works wonderfully well. In your Zoom, I got
Okay.
2. All right, great. Okay, so a few of you guys want to do a startup. You can give a thumbs up in the Zoom call. There's an option for thumbs up. Okay, great, wonderful. So, so I think there are. I'm going to a little bit narrow down the scope also. There are a startup can mean any like a classic definition of startup is like what is in the Wikipedia or Investopedia articles, which is like, a startup is a company or a project undertaken by an entrepreneur to develop and validate a scalable economic model. I know that's a mouthful. Let me break it down into smaller pieces, right? So basically, and it's basically anything that you're doing as an initiative to do to solve any particular pain point. It can be anything. Like you want to climb a hill, you want to make it easier to cook dosas, for example. You want to make it easier to find friends, chat with friends, things like that. Any of that part. If you're solving a pain point, then you're trying to do what is called a simple product and a simple solution, trying to find a solution for a particular problem, right? That aspect of finding a solution for a real world problem, right, is can be broadly thought of as a startup, right? At a very high level and a very basic level. And this startup can range in any fields. So as you guys already know, I'm sure you guys have heard of, like in agriculture in Punjab and in Tamil Nadu, there are in farm fields, the there was a water motor pumping up and was wasting a lot of water. There was some ingenious guy who said that, I'm going to remotely control the water pump and all from through phone, so that if it goes up, it is already filled, they'll switch on, switch off the motor from a remote place, right? That's an excellent product, right? Excellent product, wherein and a startup, if you think about it, wherein they're trying to solve a clear pain point of overflowing water pump and they cannot be somebody in person all the time, so they can do it from remote. So the solving this, identifying this pain point can be in any space, any vector, any industry, right? And providing a solution for that pain point can involve anything. It can be a technology oriented, it can be an organic oriented. Like if I'm having a tough time in digesting food, so they can actually give me an organic lactose free food. That's an excellent pain point to solve as well, right? So all of these are just examples of identifying a pain point and then trying to provide a solution for the pain point, right? This act of identifying a pain point, that there is a pain point, there is something inefficient, or there's a problem, it's not working correctly, and then trying to find a solution, suitable, more efficient, better solution, is sort of the first initiative. But after that, you have to make that solution scalable. When we say scalable, and that's an important aspect of a startup or an entrepreneurship, and this is where the tricky thing comes, wherein yes, now it applies to one use case, but how do we make this solution applicable for 1,000 customers, 1,000 users, or 1,000,000 users, or 10 million users, right? And that is the scalable part of it, right? Scalability part of it. Now, and that is a very, very important part, because if you're not addressing a big enough pain point that will scale for hundreds and thousands and millions of people, then it quickly becomes like a hobby. Like you're doing a pain point, you're doing some small house hobby, things like that. It turns out to be like that, right? And that is what differentiates between a hobby of like doing some small things here and there, carving something or doing some small tricks, from a hobby to actually a scalable startup or a scalable business, right? And this is an important distinction that I think everybody should have it in their mind when they're looking to venture out. So the reason why I bring this out essentially is also important is because um, the there are a lot of problems in India everywhere world over, right? There are small inefficiencies everywhere. For example, even when you get out of your apartment, there might be some, potholes and things like that. How do you fix a pothole? Yes, you can get a load of water, sand and fix a pothole. That's perfectly fine. But how do you make it scalable? How do you fix all the potholes in all over India? Right? That's the larger problem, right? So um, a lot of the way I've seen essentially is that when I talk to other students and other companies and other employees from other startups or companies as well, is that uh, they are very creative. They come up with wonderful solutions, but these solutions and the problems that they're trying to address are one-off. When I say one-off, they are there for that moment, that particular narrow scope, and not large enough. It is not a large enough problem to be solved, right? And it's a very fundamental distinction to understand before anybody ventures out to do a startup, right? And to do any business on their own, for example, right? Um, so so uh, so the idea is that you need to be able to find. So just to summarize on this part is that it's very important to find a problem, a pain point that the customer or the end user is having a problem, and it's important to find a efficient solution for solving that problem, right? Now that's the first step. Now once we do that, then you go and evaluate, you know how big of a problem is this problem. Is it a problem faced by 5 people, 10 people, or is it a problem that applies to like 5 million people, 10 million people, or 100 million people? Then you go ahead and find a solution that is scalable for this 5 million, 100 million, 200 million people, right? That is an important, um, that's an important understanding and that frame of mind that you guys need to have uh, before you venture out to do a startup, or actually think about evaluating a startup as well and things like that. Is that fine? Hands up. I want to make sure everybody is okay with this explanation. If you have any questions, you can ask me right now before I move to the next slide. I don't have too many slides, so you can ask me questions even now. Any questions? Any hands up?
Mr. Bharti, this
Yeah.
is Mahesh. Actually, once you start and things like that, if someone fails in the start itself, like how to find some sort of motivation for a student or for anyone who start a company, start a firm, and they proceed with some market study and they do everything. Somehow if they fail, and how to cope up with the failure of this entrepreneurship thing.
Got it. Interesting. Got it. So, um, so by the nature of a startup, right? So 99% of the startups fail. Only 1% of the startups go ahead to be successful. Of these 1% startups, 1% of that 1% startups go ahead and become a billion dollar, multi-million dollar company and things like that, a global enterprise. So I think it is very important, and I think it's very important for everybody to understand, for the students to understand, and all the parents of the students to understand as well, that startup is a lonely journey. Okay, in the sense Um, you don't have India's population is 100 crores. You don't have 10 crores or 50 crores, 50% of the population doing startup. It's only a very small fraction of people actually doing a startup, right? So, so it is. When you look around your neighbors and folk and your friends and things like that, you'll probably be the one or two other person who's doing startup. There's not a lot of people who's doing startup, right? So it is going to be a lonely journey, right? So first thing is, I think it's important to make sure that like know the depth of your know how deep before you get into it, right? So it's the same thing. You need to make sure the students, either the biggest advice for students or any early stage employees or career guys is simply to say is that, you know what, you need to make sure you know what you're getting into, right? It is going to be a lonely journey. It is going to be a long journey. It's not going to be done in like 1 month, 2 months, or 6 months or anything. It's going to be a year, 2 years or something of that sort. So you need to be able to sustain that level, that much time. And that involves a lot of things, right? I mean, like your parents, your ecosystem, your friends, family, everybody needs to be, if not supporting, they should not be deriding you. They should not be dissuading you from not doing it. They should not be every day in day in out. They should not say don't do this, don't do this, right? That's an important part, even if they don't encourage it on a daily basis, right? um so so given all this stuff, it's going to be lonely thing. And given the fact that 99% of the startups do fail, right, in the first year, and that's a fact, and it's a statistics, a worldwide statistics, not just in India, in the USA as well, in the worldwide market. I think it is important to know that this is the case, that this is the truth, that your startup can have a chance to fail. And as an entrepreneur, as a startup guy, it is important to be very, very thick-skinned. If you're being very sensitive, so the entrepreneurship startup is not for the lighthearted. I mean, that is, you can go and read it anywhere, in any from advice from any of the big entrepreneurs like Reid Hoffman to, you know, um, any of the big Bill Gates to Elon Musk, anybody, anyway. Startup is not for the weak-hearted. It has to be, a startup is, startups require certain amount of perseverance, certain amount of resolve, a certain amount of different mindset and a thick-skinned nature to be even, first of all, undertaking a startup. That is also to say that startup is not all the world. I mean, there are a lot of better and more important things to do than a startup. World is huge. There are many other professions, many other aspects of life, of the world, and economy, and a career that you can do and achieve, be highly successful without doing a startup. Startup does not equate to success, right? And that's an important distinction to everybody to understand, especially the students, especially because now startup is a very big hype cycle, like very big hype, right? Long time ago, I think, like when I was doing my studying engineering was the hype. If you did not do your BE engineering, your career is ruined, something of that sort, right? I mean, back 15 years ago, something of that sort. But that's not the case, obviously, right? There are hundreds and thousands and millions of students and people who have not done engineering who have been extremely successful in the current age, and they have gone ahead and have a wonderful life, right? So currently, in the same fashion, startup is having a hype cycle where startup is the one and all stuff. So I don't think we should take the market trend or the hype like that. There are a lot of other bigger, better, more enjoyable career routes to take than a startup. But if you're taking a startup, then if you are interested in doing a startup, and if you want to take the path of entrepreneurship, be well informed that it is going to be a bumpy ride, and it is going to be you have to be thick-skinned, and you have to make sure that you make a lot of friends, you may have enough support system in your life, both from parents, friends, and everybody, to be there when your initiative sometimes falters, right? It's always a sinusoidal curve. What goes up, what has to come down, what goes down has to come up. So you will have a bumpy road, but then you'll have to have faith that it'll come up after some time, and you need to be patient and perseverance to go there. Does that answer your question, Mahesh?
Yeah. And
Okay.
adding
Yeah.
to that, Definitely as a startup, I don't think people will invest their own money, right? So because they would like to save something for their family, so that if it fails, then they can always fall back to the family. But how to find suitable investors kind of stuff, or
Now,
people, angel investors or venture capitalists, something like that. So, but it's not that easy to find one who's willing to spend the money on your startup or on your idea. How to go about these things? Is there any a rule kind of stuff? Look for these kind of people, or how to go about that?
sure, sure. So excellent question, right? So the markets differ a lot. In the US, right? They're a little bit lucky in the sense if you are in a top tier college like Stanford, Harvard, or anything of that sort, if you have a brilliant student over there, and if you have a good idea and a wonderful PowerPoint presentation, you could go out of the street, go knock on a VC door, on an angel door, and get a funding, okay, without doing anything. That exists today. That has been existing for the past few years. I know of my friends have done it and things like that, right? So in India, it's a completely different market. If you have a brilliant idea, and if you're the topper in your college, and if you go talk to a almost 99.9999% of the time, nobody's going to fund your startup. Nobody will fund your startup. Nobody will give you any money. So to differ from what you have said, Mr. Mahesh, I don't think you have a choice other than to invest your money in India. If you want to do a startup, you will have to pitch in your personal money. There is no escaping from it in India, in an Indian market, anywhere in India, basically, unless you're a already well-established entrepreneur, like Mukesh Bansal or something like that. But that's a completely different story, and this is all students, right? Different audience as well, right? As a student, you will have to put in some amount of very little capital, not like in lakhs or anything of that sort, but very little capital and a lot of sweat equity. When I say sweat equity, is your time and effort. So it is very important in the Indian market to have an MVP. When I say MVP is the minimum viable product. A minimum viable product is basically a proof of concept of whatever you think your product is going to be. It can be an app, it can be a robot, it can be it can be a system device, a different way of light, tube light, or something of that sort, anything of that sort, right? But it has to have an MVP, right? It has to have an MVP, and that's why that's why a lot of startups nowadays are coming up in the software field, because to build an MVP is very easy to create an MVP using software, either as a mobile app or a website or a big data machine or something. It's very, very easy, and you have all the data infrastructure at a very low cost, right? And if you're a student or something like that, you get pretty much everything for free from AWS and Azure and Google and all of that, right? And so the important part is you have to, as a student, as a student entrepreneur and things like that, it is very important to think a lot about the idea, come up, spend the effort, sweat, equity, sweat, time in building an MVP, minimum viable product, very small product as an app or a website or a model, data model or an Excel sheet or something of the prototype, and then have some early customers. When I say early customers, it did not be in like, hundreds of thousands. But in India, with the population, having tens and thousands of customers is very easy, right? Is very easy from friends and family and things like that. And it need not be revenue generating. It need not be generating revenue, but you'll have to have proof that there is demand for this product and demand for an idea, that you're solving a real world pain point, right? And not some hypothetical, imaginary thing. Like, for example, there were tons of startup. I'll give you an example. There were tons of startup in the US. There was a laundry startup, right? In the US, people were starting or doing a lot of startups where you can order for a laundry, book a laundry, and somebody will come home and pick your, like your suit and everything, go and laundry it, and then iron it, and then have it very clean and stuff like that. And that got like a $5 million funding, when I was in the US like 5 years ago, right? And immediately there was a copycat startup in India. There were at least 5 or 6 of startups who said, laundry and all stuff. It did not pan out. It did not get any funding or anything of that sort. They were all like, it did not pan out. They all died in like fire in a couple of years actually, because the thing is, there are enough laundry guys in India already that you can easily access at home and things like that. That is not a valid pain point in India, in the Indian market. So I think it's important to make sure we are solving a valid pain point, and you're having an MVP, and you have a decent amount of first set of customers, early customers, right? Once you have that, then you are in a much, in a much better level, from a much better level to go ahead and venture out and talk to these entrepreneurs, talk to these angel investors for funding. So I'll cover this a little bit later as well, but there are many government-sponsored programs as well, like the Startup India, obviously, is a very big initiative that the BJP government has done, which is very, very good. And there are public portals where you can apply for grants, which is unsecured loan and things like that. And we can also go and talk to angel investors, and there are tons of angel investors and early stage VCs in India. If you just search on the internet or go to Twitter, there are tons. You can contact them, anybody, very easily, and they will say yes or no, right? I mean, they will oblige to say, sure, I'll go for you can talk to me now. I think your product is interesting, or they will say, no, I'm not interested in things. Does it help answer?
Yeah.
Great. Sure. Any other questions? Any hands up? All right.
I think we can go ahead, please, because I think you may have answers for what questions are coming up now.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
I think. Yeah. So I think great. I mean, I think I had this different little side on entrepreneurship, which is similar to the startup, but it's a little bit of a different, right? In the sense that this is like the official definition, but the point is entrepreneurship, and this is where startup and entrepreneurship go very hand in hand, right? Entrepreneurship is a lot focus on the process or execution. So a lot of people can do a startup, or let me put it this different way. Anybody can do a startup, in the sense, anybody can say, you know what, hey, I think there's a pain point, and I'm going to find a solution for this pain point. I'm going to figure out how to put this box under this box. That's a pain point, and then so you're finding a solution for it. That's wonderful. And you're finding a solution for it. And that's a startup, and you're trying to do a product out of it and things. That is great. Now, in order to scale that startup to a viable business, to a larger scalable business and a profitable business, after the initial glory and initial thrill of doing it and getting this, what we call as the product market fit, or like the MVP, saying, okay, there are real customers who are going to use it, and I am solving a real pain point. After that first initial euphoria and all of that happiness and all of that, the maturity of the startup and the growth comes in execution, right? And that is where entrepreneurship comes from, right? Entrepreneurship is all about how do you make this process execution the most efficient and make a viable business and a scalable business to grow, right? And these two go hand in hand, right? Because you are able to start it, but then you can't stop from there. You'll have to make it a bigger business. And that is why you have, all these big guys like Jeff Bezos, like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and all these are called wonderful entrepreneurs of the world, because they've not just, like, take for example Elon Musk, right? They said, you know what, gas cars or gasoline cars are polluting the world. It's a problem. We have to solve it. How do you solve it? Sure, no pollution, for pollution-free cars, right? pollution-free cars, and and then have it as battery and things, and that's a solution to part. Sure, great, wonderful idea. That's a startup. Tesla was started back in 2003. If you 2007, I think 2007. It was as a very small private company. But then that's not the point, right? The point is, how do you make it a successful, viable business model? That is where the entrepreneurship comes, and that's why Elon Musk comes in to say that, you know what, this is not just a solution to a problem. I'm going to make a business out of it. I'm going to make a larger business out of it. If you read the book, there's a book on Elon Musk saying that, a quest for fantastic future, Elon Musk, right? Wherein he says that there were innumerable number of problems and process challenges, execution problems that Elon had to go after to actually have this first model of car even launched in the market, right? And that is execution, and that is entrepreneurship, right? So these two go like sort of in hand, and so entrepreneurship execution matters a lot when you're trying to move to the next level of scalability and viability of the business model. Cool. And then so I want to talk a little bit about also these two are great. So startup in India, in fact, if you go back to like when I was in college, when I was in SSN and folks, there was nothing a concept of startup, like very, very vaguely heard a startup, right? Very vaguely heard entrepreneurship and all of that, not a big buzzword or anything of that sort. Until 2010, when I think Flipkart, 2010 or something, with Flipkart and a few other companies became big companies, and they were actually doing a good job here in India. And then I think in 2014, when the NDA government, this current government came first, and then they had a government mandate, for startup and things, which is superb, right? And they went ahead and did this Startup India initiative with the government. It was a massive undertaking, and although it has gone through many bumps, because I mean they had a lot of hiccups here and there, they've tried to come up with a good initiative. There's a public website right now, which has tons and tons of information on the different grants and different all of this. It is. I've heard to start a company in India before was very, very hard, and now it is simplified. If you ask me, even now it's horribly slow and bad. If you guys don't mind, I have to take this call. I'm really sorry. I have I'm really sorry about this.
But you take and come back actually.
No issue, sir. You mute yourself. Go ahead.
Yes.
Mahesh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to share till he comes back, there are schemes from Government of India called PRISM for students as well as others can understand. That's the promotion of research and innovation among small scale industries, etc. So that scheme is supporting for validating your idea as well as scaling it up. So it can start with 2 lakhs to validate an idea. To the next level, you can even go up to a grant of 45 lakhs for starting the company. So this has to be applied to the technology business incubator, which is housed in Anna University campus. So anyone who has an idea, you got a project which has been done earlier and you want to scale it up as a product, we can go through the scheme called PRISM. And I know some people there, so it is possible to approach them. That is one way. The other one, there are a lot of incubation setups available in many colleges, including SSN. We are only starting now. We have not yet got an incubator as of now. Whereas VIT has got one and many other institutions have got a startup. They call it as an incubation center. So incubation center, you can approach, give your idea. They will help you in converting into a business model. They will help you in taking to presenting to venture capitalists, etc. Because the venture capitalists may not know you, but they know VIT. They will go to the particular institution. So they will arrange certain meetings with the venture capitalists who will support you. So these are some possible ways. So as of now, we can either go through the prism as an individual, or we can go through any of the institutes which have got the incubation setup. So these are the possible. Incubation setup will help you in developing your idea into a business. Whereas in Prism, you have to go with an idea. They will help put a mentor to you in order to support you. So all these things are available. Only thing is you have to come out of this publication mode and get into a product and try to do something. Okay. And that's what I wanted to share. We'll wait for him to come back.
Okay.
Hello. Yes. Hi. I'm really, really sorry. I had to, it was an urgent call. Okay.
Yes, Bharathi. Yes.
Should I continue? I'm really sorry.
Yes,
for
yes.
that.
You start continue, Bharathi.
Yes. So essentially, I want to talk about the Startup India initiative. So in India, they have, as I was mentioning, they used to say that starting a company was very, very hard earlier. Before I started, I mean, like we went ahead and started this whole company. But I think I somehow believe that even now, starting a company in India does require a bunch of process and things that. But I'm guessing it was much more harder before. That being said, anybody can go ahead and above 18 years old can go ahead and start a company, register a company, and then be registered, authorized by the government of India within like 1 month. Basically, it takes the whole process takes about a month, right, to multiple verifications and things like that. The best part essentially is that the Startup India does have 2 or 3 certifications. One is called the DIP, Department of Planning and Planning and things like that. It's called the DIP certification. The DIP certification can be applied. Any startup that is less than 7 years old and has not generated less than 25 crores in revenue can go ahead and get this DIP certification. And when I say the DIP certification, it's very helpful because this certification can be used to apply for a whole bunch of funding and grants across many of the Startup India initiatives. The best thing that the Startup India government has done essentially is to have this common portal called Startup India. The link is there. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, I'm not sure if you can open it, but anybody can go and see it. It's in the Startup India website. And you can register yourself as a startup with your, after you've got your, what's called as the company registration number, CIN, incorporation number, and DIP certification. After that, you can go and register yourself as a company. The best part is that Government of India is working with like thousands of all other VCs and incubators and angel funders, right, to have a common portal for any sort of hackathons, any sort of funding events and things like that. To the question Mr. Mahesh asked earlier, so this is one very good gateway that the students can use, right, and prospective entrepreneurs can use, because once you register there, like we as a company, we keep getting emails saying that there is a startup challenge by Bosch, the German company Bosch, for green technologies, right? We are doing this challenges for startups who solve X and Y pain points, and the grant is around 50 lakhs. This is the last date for entering this thing. This is the application form, and the application form is within the Startup India portal itself, and it gets directed to the channeled to the Bosch company. And there's another startup challenge by Siemens, and then Siemens says, say there's a startup challenge. We want to give a grant of 25 lakhs to someone who's solving, who some of the companies who are solving, I don't know, battery technology in a better way, something like that, right? So this has become a common aggregation portal where all the companies, all the angel investors, all the VCs, and all the larger companies who are doing the CSR activities and all of that, to use this portal as a common gateway for all of their funding and challenge grant programs, basically. And because of this, if you just subscribe and registered, almost every other day, you'll get an email from a different challenge. And you just have to apply for the best grant and a funding program that applies to your startups. If you're doing in agriculture, there are a bunch of agriculture. With Corona, when last year there was a Corona COVID challenge by COVID TAC team, right? There was a team formed. And then there was obviously the Zoom call challenge was there, which is like the very hyped, which is we'll give you 1 crore for whoever brings a Indian version of a Zoom call and things like that. So I think there are multiple competition and challenges in grant where the government is trying to be this a single platform, a single gateway for channeling all of the grants away. And this is an excellent resource. From a compliance and a regulation perspective, in Startup India, I think we have the number of documents is very limited. It's not a whole lot. It's basically your company incorporation certificate. If you're actually earning revenues and if you're selling products, anything of that sort, and not like a social media, for example, then you need to have a GST number, and that's about it. And then once you have that, then you need to have a DIP certificate as well. And then along with it, you also get a PAN number and things, a company PAN number. And then you have to have a bank account associated with it. That's about it, right? So there are only 5 documents, if you think about it, that you are legally supposed to require to have as a company to be operating legally under the law of the Government of India and then Startup India program and things like that. And these are pretty straightforward documents, stuff like that. The process to get these documents can be a little staggered and it might take a month or so. But there is no requirement for 10 or 20 or 30 different types of document and things. I think which I believe was the case earlier before Startup India Initiative program was started and things like that. So from that part, they made it definitely much simpler and things like that, right? So I think that's all I had to cover majorly. For any questions or anything of that sort, or if you want me to cover any specific topic, I can definitely do it as well.
Bharathi, I got a small question. Yes. This is Annamalai again.
Yes.
So of late, there are a lot of interest on faculty doing a startup. All along, we only suggest students to do a startup. Of late, there are some talk on spin-off companies and management, like our own management is willing to consider faculty working in college at the same time having their own center at the incubation center.
Yes.
So what would be your suggestions for the faculty?
Yes, perfect, excellent. So that's a good point actually, because we as Sigaram Technologies actually a year ago, I think Balasundaram sir knows this actually, we started a company with the IIIT DM in Kelambakam, in that Kelambakam to Vandalur road. There's a IIIT college. So we started a partnership program with the IIIT faculty. It was a hardware device. Hardware device that we want to provide. It's a speedometer. I'll come to the product a little later, but they did not pan out because of COVID and a bunch of they became a restriction on the Chinese imports of the manufacturing and all that stuff. So it kind of did not go through very well. But the point is, Mr. Annamalai sir, I think nowadays both the startups, investing community, the government, right, and the entrepreneurs themselves are coming to a realization that Software startups are a little different, but the manufacturing startup, like hardware startups, robotics, chips, like low power energy chips, like windmill or any of these smart devices, health monitoring, smart devices, and all of that requires deep technology, lot of research, and lot of infrastructure as well, right? And startups with a very low capital and very low resources cannot fund all of that, cannot do all of that. We cannot forever be building apps, smaller mobile apps and chat apps and things like that, right? We have to do deep tech research in startups and companies as well. So I think from that realization, there is a huge acceptance and encouragement by both by the government and the VC community to have professors and staff